Welcome back everyone, it is time to talk about the second half of Beyblade Burst God. In my last video I ended things off saying that if Volt showed me a generational performance, then my life was his. So did the second half of Beyblade Burst God live up to the hype? Well, that's a question I'll answer later on in this video. I gotta make sure my watch time increases, game is game. All jokes aside, I think this video will spark a lot of conversation, so I'm interested to see how the comments for this video are going to turn out. Anyways, I've stalled enough, it's time to talk about my thoughts on the second half of Beyblade Burst God. Now before the World League starts, the show contains some episodes that set up powerful opposition for BC Soul, with the show introducing a member of the Big Five, Joshua Boone, aka the worst character in all of Beyblade Burst. If I had to work on set with this entitled brat, I would want to punch his teeth out. Joshua has no respect for the cast and crew, deciding to immediately change plans on the fly with no regard for all the preparation that goes into a proper schedule. Like if Joshua showed remorse for the sudden changes, I wouldn't be annoyed, but the dude is a jerk. He's not even a good actor either. He's a loser, a bum, and a piece of trash. His whole gimmick sucks too. The fact that this show made me sit through not one but two episodes for his introduction drove me insane. I applaud this series for finding a way to create a character that I hate more than Stan Bumberg. The show even tries to humanize Joshua by saying, "Oh my gosh, he's such a nice guy, making kids smile is his dream." Sometimes I feel like this show thinks I'm stupid because I'm not buying into this propaganda, because episodes later on this season contradict this whole narrative about Joshua. Joshua is a narcissist with no redeeming qualities. It's that simple. I hate that Joshua was a member of the Big Five because it means that I had to watch this series hype this man up to be a threat by defeating characters that are better written. I had to witness Wakia lose to Joshua. I was so heated. But that's enough about Joshua for now. I'll dive more into why I hate this character later. The next couple of episodes are more training as BC Soul decides to recruit Zoro as their new coach. The dude creates a training stadium called the Infinite Bay Stadium, which is Beyblade's Burst version of the Nemesis Stadium, so it's cool to see concepts used from previous generations in the newer series of Beyblade. Afterwards, there's BC Soul vs Royals round 2. This match was pretty uninteresting. Aside from seeing Hickson cheer for Vault and seeing my goat Sasha cook, there's nothing else to really talk about here. Then there's an episode of Real Sunbat vs SB Rios, where Wakia uses a new special move called Super Tornado Attack, having Wyvern glide across the stadium walls, speed up and launch itself at the enemy. It's a cool way to give Wakia another buff, but unfortunately he loses because of the plot. Wakia being a punching bag for Shaka here doesn't really bother me so much because there's some payoff to Wakia's loss in later episodes. Also, it's revealed that Stan is on Shaka's team. This guy refuses to disappear from the series. Then before the big finale of this arc, there's BC Soul versus SB Rios and the New York Bulls versus the Paris Bladers. Shaka had an episode focused on his journey a couple of episodes back that, aside from having some cool animated fight scenes, showcase his determination and willpower to surpass Volt, going through a 100 blader challenge in order to become Barna Clay's disciple. He is a legendary blader and also Hickson's father. This challenge results in Shaka awakening Siege Excalibur's full power and awakening its new move, Triple Impact. This is also the first time seeing the avatar for Excalibur fully awakened. Until this moment, it has just been the sword appearing, so that was pretty cool. So this match between the two teams is where Shaka and Volt's dynamic and Hickson's plotline take center stage. While Hickson's plotline to prove himself to his dad is interesting on paper, his fight against Stan, where all the payoffs should occur, is mostly off screen. Thus, the story failed to make me care enough about this subplot, and it just ended up feeling like filler to pad the episode. Volt's fight against Shaka is solid, but nothing about it had me hyped the same way their fight in season 1 did. This kind of qualifies as a more superficial criticism, but that's genuinely how I felt. As for the New York Bulls versus the Paris Bladers, there's nothing really important to talk about during this match. It can be summed up as Joshua winning games he shouldn't be winning. After BC Soul's win against SB Rios, it is finally time for the long-awaited match between BC Soul and the New York Bulls. This match is so good. Before the match even starts, there's a nice moment between Chris and Trad, where Trad tells Chris that he might have misjudged her leadership, showcasing his respect towards her. It's also nice to see that there's no bad blood between the two. The writers really surprised me with how the finale of this arc was executed, because going into this matchup I was confident that Red Eye would be representing the New York Bulls, but to see that only Free and Joshua were the main powerhouses of the team was quite the surprise. Honestly, I think this was a smart decision by the writers, because there was no way BC Soul was winning the World League if Red Eye was present. Instead, the New York Bulls have two jobbers and Yellow Eye to fill out the rest of the team. Yellow Eye being on the New York Bulls also confirms my theory that Gilton was Ashram, although I feel that was pretty obvious. The people at Snake Pit don't really do a good job of disguising themselves. Bad disguises aside, what isn't bad is the first game of the match, Yellow Eye versus Kiyama, a revenge match to redeem himself for that absolutely disgraceful loss during the Red Eye arc. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this in my last video, but I always see comments from people telling me not to invest stocks in Kiyama. Once again, I'm confused because Kiyama cooks that Snake Pit fraud. Kiyama scores a burst finish in the first round. He low diffed Yellow Eye thanks to mastering the knuckle grip, resulting in a nice conclusion for his development in this season. See, this is why people need to just shut up and let me experience the series for myself instead of trying to lower or raise my expectations for certain characters, because I honestly have no issues with Kiyama and Beyblade Burst God. After Kiyama starts things off strong for BC Soul. The next battle is between Joshua and Kuza. I was doing rituals hoping for Kuza to defeat Joshua and send that man to hell. Unfortunately, the second Kuza joined BC Soul, it started his losing streak. The match against Joshua was no different. Then Cisco battles against Free, and obviously Free wins because it's Free. The show has to do this in order to build up tension during this match. Anyways, with BC Soul against the wall, they send in Vault, which from this point onwards, the writers locked in. Seeing Valkyrie use the bound layer on the ground, allowing for an uppercut attack against Jinyo's to occur, brought a smile to my face. I have never wanted a character to get humbled so hard in this series before, because if I haven't said it enough in this video, I hate Joshua. Seeing Joshua absolutely devastated upon the realization that he lost was cathartic. The next moment fueled my happiness even further. As Free is ready to end this match, Joshua stops him. Joshua really said captain's orders. I love seeing this fraud stress out so much. Even Gilton was telling Joshua, bro, you are washed, get your sorry ass back on the bench. Joshua then breaks the phone because he can't comprehend the fact that his career is over. This episode felt like Christmas. Oh, I needed that. There's no limit to my hating when it comes to Joshua. However, surprisingly, it's not Joshua freaking out that made me love this next fight. It is Cisco politely pleading to represent BC Soul in the last battle, something he would never have done during the start of the season. Seeing Hickson and Kiyama immediately entrust the future of this match to him showed how much Cisco's bond with the team had developed over the season, and having Satan use Valkyrie's frame and battle was a cherry on top. This is how you do the power of friendship. I had a huge smile on my face throughout the finale of this match. Comparing BC Soul in this episode to how they were in episode 1 is night and day.
You're no longer relevant. You had your time. It's over. Please go away. James Harden right now looks like the best offensive player in football.
Cisco versus Joshua is the payoff of everything the first half of Beyblade Burst God has been building up towards. It feels so rewarding to witness his team evolve. Like, Cisco versus Joshua is easily in my top 3 favorite fights in this series. Also, the after party celebrating the team's victory was pretty wholesome too. Overall, the writers cooked up a great meal with the BC Soul plotline. But Beyblade Burst God is on that Jujutsu Kaisen pacing, so after literally 2 minutes it's back to more action. Everyone is already on a flight to Canada to watch Louis versus Red Eye. At this point, I was under the impression that this encounter was happening too early, but I was proven wrong because this encounter leads into my favorite episode in all of Beyblade Burst so far. Episode 36 is a definition of greatness from the direction, animation, soundtrack, pacing, and character writing. I was blown away at how good this episode was. I was like, this is Beyblade? This was the episode that set my expectations for the rest of the season, as the show once again goes in a direction I did not expect. Red Eye losing to Louis left me confused at first because Red Eye is the main antagonist of the season. I thought he would go undefeated until Vault defeated him in the final episode. Louis was going to be a sacrifice to hype up Red Eye, but no, the writers actually have the main antagonist go through a similar journey to the protagonist. Reaching their respective goals isn't going to be easy. I love when a series has a protagonist and antagonist grow alongside each other. Also, the scene where Vault continuously calls out to Shu as he pushes Vault away hit me in the chest. That hurt to watch. Plus, the soundtrack during that moment really elevated the scene. But after Vault's defeat is when this episode earns the respect I'm currently giving it, as the next 8 minutes were insane. Red Eye truly is the best part of Beyblade Burst God. For the first time in this season, his thoughts are revealed. The show does a really good job of presenting his frustration to the audience, how Louis' existence is this insurmountable wall in his life, as the man has been traumatized by these constant setbacks. All leading up to Red Eye taking part in the Requiem project, a simulation to connect his spirit with Spriggan under the oath that Red Eye will discard everything, completely cutting down his old life as Shu and anything related to it. In my last video, I talked about how Beyblade Burst and Blue Lock are similar, and this episode drives home my belief on this even further. A major theme in Beyblade Burst is looking at different aspects of what a person will do in order to gain strength, and how these decisions allow someone to discover new parts of themselves. It's interesting compared to the Metal Fight Saga that just solely focused on saying that as long as you have a true blader spirit, you can win. The Burst generation takes a more realistic approach to some of the darker aspects of self-improvement. So far, I'm liking this approach more than the other generations of Beyblade. Now, alongside the great character development for Red Eye, this entire sequence for the Requiem project went crazy animation-wise. Like, lord, the Sakuga during this section was so sexy. Also, the character acting from Louis' psychotic facial expressions that made me think I was watching a Yu-Gi-Oh episode to Freeze robotic movements. Even small details like the angle during the scene where Red Eye looks up to Spriggan added to the atmosphere of the situation, that this is a divine being standing in front of Red Eye. And the moment Spriggan and Red Eye fuse looked like something out of Devilman Crybaby. This episode might even be my favorite Beyblade episode of all time. It's that good. Now, after that phenomenal episode, the show transitions to the God Bladers Cup arc, and before I give my thoughts on it, I need y'all to make a promise with me. Please hold yourself back from commenting about any statements I make until you have completed the video, because if I start seeing comments discussing any statements I make and I can clearly tell that the person didn't watch the entire video, I might lose my mind. So once again, please watch the entire video before commenting. I cannot stress this enough. Okay, with that out of the way, I can start talking about the arc. I have very mixed opinions on the Godbladers Cup arc, which I think will surprise a lot of people given the fact that I have read a lot of comments on my part 1 review of season 2, and I am under the impression that this arc is highly rated by the majority of people. So a lot of things that I will be discussing I feel are aspects that not a lot of people have talked about, but I'll elaborate on that in a minute. The way I'm going to structure this is I'll talk about all the things I didn't like about this arc first, then I'll talk about all the positives. That way I can end this video on a good note. The Godbladers Cup arc lasts 13 episodes, containing some of the most hyped matchups in Beyblade Burst. Unfortunately, for an arc that on paper should be the peak of the series, the Godbladers Cup arc has a lot of flaws. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. This arc suffers from the fact that the pacing is horrendous. On this channel, I have a lot of videos covering Jujutsu Kaisen, a series that suffers from pacing issues. Somehow the Godbladers Cup arc made Jujutsu Kaisen's fast pacing look slow. I don't understand what the writers were thinking in introducing so many different plot lines in this arc, setting up so many interesting matchups, and then deciding to rush most of these things. If the writers wanted a round robin tournament so badly, then make the arc longer. Personally, I would have written the arc to be a standard top 8 tournament where if you lose a game, you are eliminated. That way the series can spend more time on characters that are actually important instead of fluff that is just there to promote new Beyblades, which is the first major problem I'm going to discuss. A lot of the characters in this arc are either pointless or are just not written well enough to where I care about their plot lines. Because this arc introduces 2 new characters that are garbage. Norman and Curse suck. Norman is a member of Snake Pit that wants to defeat Red Eye so that he can regain his status in the organization. Other than that, he just goes around claiming that he won't be Ashram's pawn and then becomes a pawn. He's literally introduced in this arc to take up screen time and do nothing interesting for the plot. He's just a walking Beyblade ad. Now, aside from the new characters introduced, some of the established characters in this arc were massively disappointing to watch. These characters being Rue, Boa, Joshua, and Louis. Rue enters the tournament as a member of the Big Five and leaves the tournament with not a single win under his belt, having all of his matches be either skipped or rushed. The same thing happens to Boa. What was the point of this character? They serve zero purpose. 90% of Boa's matches in this arc are rushed. Boa's only win in this arc is against Kuza. What were the writers thinking? Boa is Red Eye from Temu. It's as if the writers had an idea for this character and then dropped it halfway through. You replace Boa with anyone else and the story doesn't lose out on anything. Boa is a definition of a nothing character. Also, I mentioned Kurz before. He's just alright. The typical asshole comes to respect the vault after seeing his strength. His arc is pretty similar to Rue during the World League. So everything about this character just comes off as a cheap copy and paste of characters like Rue and Kuon, as someone like Kuon had more dynamics with characters in season 1 than Kurz did in season 2. Thus, Kurz kind of ends up being another nothing character. Speaking of nothing characters, welcome to Joshua Boone. I was so pissed when the writers managed to trick me into believing that this character would go through some development. As a result of setting aside his pride, Joshua was able to score a point against Free, going along with Trad's plan of continuously using Genius's Cyclone Wall ability to disable Fafnir's Drain Spin to win the battle through a spin finish. Joshua's dream has always been to surpass Free, so to see him here have to give up his star persona in order to win would have been an awesome progression for his character. It would have actually made me say that Joshua was a good character. However, the writers go the lazy route and have Joshua regress back to his old ways so that Free couldn't win. It would have been interesting to see how Free was going to outsmart Joshua and win, but no, Joshua just goes back to being an idiot. This was so annoying to watch because if Joshua executed the plan properly, then Free gets low diffed. Like so many times throughout this arc, I felt like my intelligence was being tested. Did the writers think I was going to find this moment funny or something? So many aspects of this arc feel like a waste of time. It's ridiculous. Hell, Gilton is set up to be this mastermind of the Godbladers Cup arc, and all this man does is sit back on a chair and smirk. Useless character. I was expecting Doji level shenanigans at the bare minimum, but this guy does nothing. Important characters being garbage is one of my overarching issues with Beyblade Burst God. A lot of the new characters are simply worse versions of characters in season 1. Rue is Kuon but worse. Joshua is Zack but worse. You get the point. It's annoying because I'll be watching these episodes and all I can think about in the back of my mind is get rid of these new characters, just focus on the pre-established ones. Well, I say that and then there are pre-established characters in this season that piss me off, like Louis, the last character I mentioned on my list. In the most blunt way possible, Louis is ass in this season. It's like the writers forgot everything that made Louis good in the previous season. In season 1, Louis was not just some crazy kid. There was nuance to his character. Louis and Vault's dynamic was the heart of the finale of season 1. In season 2, we get practically nothing when it comes to Louis and Vault's dynamic. The Red Eye plotline takes priority, so at first I was fine with this decision, but Louis loses twice in this season. Louis losing against someone was set up to be a monumental character moment in season 1. In season 2, the payoff is like I just got fed a week-old pizza. Louis loses to Free, and his next match is against Red Eye, who has been destroying every Bay he defeats. You could easily have Louis' confidence be put into question, since he was just humbled in the last match, and the stakes are high as Louis will lose everything if Red Eye defeats him. But no, Free Free's victory has no effect on Louis. Louis goes into battle against Red Eye, gets his bay destroyed, and then laughs maniacally as Zoro tells the audience that Louis is laughing because he's rediscovered his joy in battling again. Even though Louis has been laughing the entire fucking season, Louis has been enjoying his battles. What is Zoro yapping about? What was the point of putting so much emphasis on the question of what will happen once Louis loses if nothing about him as a character changes once he loses? The only redeeming quality about Louis in this season is how his existence impacts Shu, but if I am solely just talking about Louis as a character in this season, he's garbage. Even Louis' fights in this season didn't impress me the way I hoped they would. Louis versus Free and Louis versus Red Eye round 2 are a matchup that should be in my top 3 burst fights, but they are not. Cisco versus Joshua is better than both. It shouldn't be like that, but it is, because again, the horrendous pacing of this arc negatively impacts so many aspects of this arc that on paper should be where the season peaks. Every Louis match in this arc feels like a spectacle with barely any substance. Now, aside from characters being badly written, another issue I have with this arc is the lack of consequences for certain characters. I'm basically talking about Free and Shu. After the World League, Free leaves the New York Bulls and has a battle against Louis, where Louis defeats Free, becoming the #1 blader in the world. So Free decides to return to BC Soul because he feels it will allow him to become stronger. But while everyone welcomes back Free with open arms, Sasha is still mad at Free for abandoning the team, which is completely valid. I believe Free abandoning the team is partly the fault of BC Soul's over-reliance on him, but Free leaving without saying anything when times were tough and then coming back like nothing happened is similar to how a dad returns into their son's life the moment they hear the kid got into the NBA. Free was moving like a toxic ex, and the show makes Sasha look insane for feeling betrayed by Free. I was like, there's no way this show is about to try and gaslight me into thinking that Free did nothing wrong. So Free's answer to Sasha's justified anger is to battle her multiple times and give her advice on her launch form, which doesn't solve anything. The man even says, yeah, I'll probably leave the team again randomly at some point. But because Free is strong, all is forgiven and he's welcomed back with minimal difficulty. Like, what am I supposed to take away from this? Free had not a single valid comeback this entire episode and just gets away with being a jerk with no repercussions. No apology, no reflection, nothing. The cast simply gives up and goes, well, that's just how Free is. Nothing we can do about it. This episode is so stupid. The writers had a chance to dive into the relationship between Free and BC Soul more and did absolutely nothing with it. Now, in regards to Shu, everything involving his plotline and the Red Eye persona is great. I don't have any issues with it. I will spend more time praising it later on in this video. My issue lies in what transpires after. Even though Shu was possessed by Spriggan, I don't think that removes all the responsibility of these actions from Shu and places them onto Spriggan. Shu still willingly decided to go down this path, and it's not like all of Shu's personality was removed when the Requiem project was completed. Like, the story tries to push this narrative that Shu is not responsible for everything, and it's weird. Shu was literally going around destroying bays prior to the Requiem project. Why is Shu just immediately forgiven? Like, not even a scene showing the general public having mixed opinions on Shu's behavior? The guy was committing acts of Beyblade terrorism and gets off scot-free? That doesn't sit right with me. It takes away from the seriousness of Shu's decision if the story isn't going to give the dude at least a slap on the wrist. Like, not even a slap on the wrist. Very stupid stuff. Because this is Beyblade, I know that the stakes and scaling is going to escalate, so if I see some world-ending threat get pardoned in the same way Shu did, that will piss me off to no end. Now, moving on from the negatives of this arc, it's time to talk about the aspects I did enjoy. Remember when I said that Wakia's loss to Shaka didn't bother me that much because of the payoff in later episodes? This arc is what I'm talking about. As Cisco is worried about his match against Shaka, Wakia appears offering to coach Cisco, telling him that through his experience against Shaka in the World League, he has a strategy that will allow Cisco to win. Wakia and Cisco are selfish characters at the start of their respective arcs, so seeing Wakia perform an act of selflessness and supporting someone else's victory, and Cisco once again carrying the bond of someone else into battle, is another moment that showcases their growth. Wakia managed to redeem himself after all of the L's he has been taking during this season. I apologize to the writers, I wasn't familiar with their game when it comes to Wakia. Plus, Cisco actually pulls through and defeats Shaka. It always feels nice to witness characters being rewarded for using their intelligence to win battles. Now, speaking of characters that redeem themselves after constantly taking L's, Kuza surprised me during this arc. I was really worried that Kuza was just going to replace Kiyama as the new punching bag of BC Soul, but Kuza proved me wrong during this match against Kurz, as Kuza needs to defeat Kurz so that Vault has a better win-loss ratio in order to advance to the semifinals, so it's nice to see him surpass his limits in order to help Vault. Now, the big three in this arc in terms of character writing are Free, Vault, and Red Eye. As I discussed earlier in this video, this season primarily focuses on the theme of strength and how far people will go in order to improve themselves. And I like how the story uses Free to analyze his topic. Free's ideology is that in order for someone to become stronger, they need to understand themselves, what life path allows allows for someone to thrive the most. Again, this is bar for bar the same messages that are explored in Blue Lock, so I love this. Characters in Beyblade Burst thrive when they set themselves in one of the two environments, one built on restriction or freedom. Someone like Volt improves with the more fun they have through battle, while someone like Shu thrives in an environment where multiple restrictions are placed upon them. So through these characters, the series shows the positive and negative effects of these choices, as while not setting limits upon yourself is important, you also need to be cautious not to overwork yourself, which is why seeing Chris rectify her previous mistake and not looking out for Free's health when she forces Free to forfeit the match was a great conclusion for her character. The final fight between Volt versus Red Eye was amazing. As in the previous match of the tournament, Red Eye goes out of his way to destroy Valkyrie's driver, so by their final encounter, Volt knows that Shu has gone off the deep end and needs to free him from the shackles of Spriggan, because at this point Spriggan has fully possessed him. Now, this fight is nothing short of fantastic. Although with the pre-established dynamic between these two characters, it's kind of obvious that this fight will cook. Two rivals that push each other to reach their own respective extremes, as both individuals respect each other so much to the point that they start placing each other on these pedestals and begin to question their own self-worth, thus allowing for the emotional conflict between the two to elevate during this fight. The fact that the two went on and had consecutive burst finishes resulting in the match going to round 18 was insane. Also in this final fight, the anime does this really cool black and white visual change in the scene with only characters' eyes being in color. The choreography during this fight is also the best in all of Beyblade Burst so far. The sequence of Spriggan's performance kept changing as it bounces back into the stadium was genius. There's even a callback to the previous season with the ultimate flash shoot, and topping everything off with a beautifully animated God Slash to conclude the match. It took 2 seasons, but my boy Volt finally becomes the champion. That alone makes this match the best in the series. Volt versus Red Eye round 3 knocked it out of the park. This final episode surpassed my expectations. Overall, while I do have a lot of issues with this season, there is still a good amount of parts of it I loved and had a great time watching. As this season contains some of the highest peaks in the series so far, but with how inconsistent it was, I did end up feeling that this season was kind of overrated. Horrendous pacing in areas, unsatisfying payoff for characters, contradictory developments, and moments where I felt like my time was being wasted don't just disappear because things like Volt versus Red Eye are great. The peaks in the season do not justify the amount of bad content I had to sit through. Having to rewatch sections of certain episodes while writing the script was painful. I saw so many comments on my part 1 video saying that the last stretch of season 2 was going to change my life. Unfortunately, it did not. If you're someone that enjoyed every aspect of the Godbladers Cup arc, more power to you. I'm happy that someone out there was able to maximize their enjoyment with it, but for me, Lord, it was hard pushing through some of these episodes. It was rough. Thank God I had the luxury of being able to binge it. Now, I already know there are going to be people claiming that I hate Beyblade Burst God and that I think it's garbage. I don't think it's horrible. Again, I just believe that this season includes a lot of flaws that hold it back from being the best season in Beyblade Burst, which is disappointing as season 2 had all of the ingredients to surpass season 1. It's like giving someone expensive ingredients to make a cake. The instructions for the recipe are easy to follow and somehow you still burn the cake. So unfortunately, season 1 remains the king. There's absolutely no way in hell I'm saying that season 2 is better than season 1. It is what it is. Hopefully with the introduction of the new protagonist, Akaba Aiga, I can finally say that season 1 has been surpassed. Aiga, please show me a flawless performance. Please, Aiga, I'm begging you. Do you have that type of motion? Do you have that type of aura? Show me who you are. Now, before I end the video, I just want to take a moment to thank my current channel member, Loki Bentillo, for supporting the channel, being the first channel member while also being at the legendary Blader role. They are simply built different. See any of my channel members in the comments of one of my videos, I want you to reply to them with the phrase W individual. Check out Anime Express, the sponsor of today's video. Let's keep it real. A lot of anime merch sucks. Low quality and the designs are not moving the soul, but the Anime Express store has something for you. Hoodies, t-shirts, shorts, LED lamps, jewelry, black blades in stock filled with Mihawk's Conqueror's hockey. This store will feed you well, especially if you are a JJK fan. And don't worry, I'm looking out for my day ones, so if you use the code TheLocalDub10, you get a 10% discount at checkout. So make sure to lock in at animeexpress.store. If you stuck around till the end of the video, I just want you to know that I appreciate you. And if you want to talk to me about anime related topics, join my Discord server. Also consider becoming a channel member, another way to support me and I support you back with shoutouts at the end of the video, early access to new videos, custom emotes, and members only videos depending on which level of membership you decide to choose. And if you're someone that enjoys anime content that keeps it real, consider subscribing so when I hit 10K, you can brag about being a day one. I gotta get back in the kitchen to cook. Peace. Yeah, okay. Joshua Boone? I call that man a bagoon. Stupid dumb kid, thought he was built for these streets, he ain't know how to eat. BC Soul's cooking it up, we gonna sizzle that boy to the lock. If I see that man talking, I'm taking the shot. Ah! What top 5 you smoking on, Joshua?